Welcome to Beyond the Blend, the podcast that goes behind the science and talks to the people at the heart of the lubricant market, telling the real story of the people who make the lubricant market move. With real insight and honest conversations, we aim to show off the people side from across the entire lubricant supply chain. Join me, Steve Knapp, and Rob Taylor as we delve behind the scenes of the lubricant industry. Let's go. Let's start with a quick 5 from 5. Brenna, first love, a lab coat or a P&L sheet?
Got to go with the lab coat, Steve.
Got to go with the lab coat. Greatest buzz, solving a gnarly technical problem or unlocking a stuck customer relationship?
I'm going to go with unlocking a stuck customer relationship.
Thinking about the future here, more excited or more restless?
Oh, definitely more excited. That's an easy one.
That's an easy one. You jumped in there. Leadership style on a good day, calm coach or energy accelerator?
Calm coach.
Nice. Let's see how we go today. Your career theme tune, Under Pressure or Don't Stop Believing?
Oh, I got to go with the rock anthem, Don't Stop Believing. Absolutely.
Don't stop believing. As long as we don't start bursting out singing it just yet, right? So,
Yes.
So welcome to Beyond the Blend. Today I'm joined by Brenna Huovie, Vice President for Additives America at Lubrizol. Brenna's career spans technology, catalyst, circularity, and now leading a major additives business. She's spoken about Built to Evolve, honoring the legacy of our industry while shaping what comes next. Today, we're going to talk about where she started, how her leadership has developed, and what she sees ahead for additives, energy, and the people working in it. So, Brenna, welcome to Beyond the Blend. Thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for that kind introduction and kind words. So I've been in the energy industry for over 30 years, and I am truly blessed with the opportunities that I have had, not just to learn and try new things, but and all the experiences and the people that I've met. But I'm really a technologist at heart. So I'm an engineer, chemical engineer. And I went to school in the Northeast of the United States. And when I was looking at industries early on as a chemical engineer, to me, the attraction with the energy industry was really around how important that is to everyday life and to world economy. And so I knew from pretty early on that I wanted to get into this space. Now, I've been in a lot of different roles. I've worked for several different companies. Today, working in, I think, the lubricants industry is, I just think it's the best of everything in terms of the people that you meet, all the different applications, the problems that we work to solve every day. And so for me, that's really energizing. And even though I have been in the industry for over 30 years, I feel like I'm still this young kid at heart that's still learning and trying and reinventing. I think that's really been sort of my experience has been reinventing myself all throughout that time.
That's so cool. I mean, it's so cool to hear that it was almost like a choice and a destination, and we'll come on to that as we go. I mean, we met at ILMA.
Yes.
You might remember, you might not remember, but we were coming down an elevator, and we both were wearing our lanyard name badges, and you went, "Oh, you're a speaker as well." Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
And I want to go back to that, our first meeting, because I then went and joined a lunch that was sponsored by Lubrizol. And whilst it was very interesting what you were talking about, something stuck with me that I wanted to ask you. And it was about, how did you manage to carry on keeping your concentration and presenting when hundreds of people were eating food in front of you with all the noise of the cutlery? And I mean, what was that like? That must have been so off-putting.
I will say that I was a little intimidated well, first of all, it was my first ILMA that I attended this year. So I am new to the organization. So I didn't really know quite what to expect. And I mean, of course, the biggest fear is that you prepare to give a talk and a keynote over lunch and nobody shows up, which that was definitely not the case. So that was, in a way, a relief that there was a room full of people, because I felt like, okay, at least there's some folks here to listen to me for 45 minutes or so. I will also say I had my team was there as well. So a number of people from Lubrizol came and joined. And so they're my cheerleaders and my rooting section. And so no matter what, with them there, it was perfect. I will say I was very preoccupied before. I did not eat lunch before I got up on stage because I wanted to be really focused on the task at hand. But when I'm given the opportunity to give an address or a talk, I like to relate it to stories. And so as long as I know what's the story and what are the key messages I want to convey, then things just kind of flow. And I have worked over the years to get more comfortable in public speaking engagements. I have actually been involved in writing plays and acting in plays and being up on the stage. And then I've also worked very hard to get in front of, whether it's in your church where you can get up and actually be a part of the worship service. So I actually did that for a number of years as well, just to get more comfortable with it. But I think that over the years, it's just something that I've become more and more comfortable with. And so when presented with an opportunity to give a presentation, I usually jump at it. Although I will say, last week I was just at the ICIS conference in New Jersey, and I asked one of our technology senior managers to give the presentation, and he did a great job. And again, telling stories, that's what people want to hear. So yeah, that's really the approach I take. And I had a lot of fun and got a lot of really good questions. And I also find when I prepare something, I also learn something as well.
Well, kudos to you, because I have to say, during that whole lunch, I mean, I had a good lunch and a good listen.
Thanks.
So for me, I had a double whammy. But I was thinking, my goodness, that could have been so off-putting. So well done, well done to you. So I should have asked you, leading lady or part of the ensemble, really. So what would be your sort of leading lady part in a play? Would there be something you would have loved to have done or have done?
Probably more the comedian. Like, I like to tell jokes and be the wisecrack. So that's more my.
Oh yeah. So would you like to do stand up then, or something like that?
I have friends that have done that, and I find it fascinating. And I lived in Chicago for 17 years. And of course, we have Second City. And someday when I have a little bit more time, I want to go and take the Second City classes, because I think that would just be a ton of fun to learn how to do that. Of course, me getting up on the stage usually embarrasses my kids. So anything I can do to embarrass my teenagers is always added plus.
Well, it becomes a driving force in our lives, doesn't it?
How could I make you very uncomfortable that way?
I mean, that's fascinating because comedy. I mean, I know in my sort of village environment, there is a guy that runs a comedy village network, and he has a lot of the top end comedians from the UK as friends. So he sort of appears on television shows. He does shows, and a lot of the top comedians come up to our village and practice their new material before they go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is a big festival.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So we get to hear all of the top comedians' routines before they're exposed to the general public. And I have to say that most comedians are probably quite introverted. Most of them probably carry some slight sort of anxiety around them, and the comedic side is a release of that. So I
It's
don't
true.
know whether that's a question. Oh, right.
I'm actually I'm introverted.
Okay.
But people say, I find that surprising based on how you're able to talk and interact, but it's an intentional thing, right? I really plan ahead, or I really think it through, and especially if I have to get up in front of people.
Yeah, I entirely get that. And I think when we get onto your career and the senior positions you have, I think there's something for someone to reflect upon straight away, right? You don't have to be that extrovert individual to manage a career. You can be the introvert. And I think that's interesting. If you take me back to feedback I used to get from my Shell leaders, if we were in a big room, they would watch me come in and they would watch me grab my coffee and instantly go step outside on my own, because I didn't like the big space. I didn't like the people, all that whole interaction side. I was quite happy being on my own with a few versus part of many. I don't know if you're similar, but just an interesting place you took me back to in my reflection.
Yeah, no, I can identify with that for sure. Introverts have this kind of a bubble around them, and if the extroverts come a little bit too far inside that, you need to get away. You need to say, okay, don't come inside my introvert bubble here. But I'm married to an extrovert, so I have learned very well how to navigate with extroverts as well as introverts, because I married an opposite. So.
So we've got half of the, well, I don't know if it's half. We've got many of the audience nodding along with us now, thinking, I can do this. I can do this, and they absolutely can. So help me get the geography. Northeast, you said northeast of America. You've mentioned Chicago. Tell me where are we speaking to now, or where was the growing up? What's been the geographical journey?
Well, I largely grew up on the East Coast of the United States. So born in Connecticut, but then moved to Jacksonville, Florida at a young age. Actually, probably the year that Don't Stop Believin' came out. I think that was 1981. And all my formative years were in Jacksonville, where I went to elementary school, middle school, high school, graduated high school, and ended up going to Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And that's where I majored in chemical engineering, and originally got a co-op job with Mobil Oil Corporation in New Jersey. Went on to work for Exxon, also in New Jersey. And that's actually where I met my husband, was in New Jersey working for Exxon. So we had the opportunity to move all around with them. Of course, Exxon and Mobil merged. And we moved overseas. Actually, let me back up. We were in New Jersey originally. And then I did a stint down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It was my first experience living on the Gulf Coast. And then moved back up to Virginia. And then from Virginia, went over to the UK for 3 years. So my husband and I actually worked in the Esso Foley refinery and had a fabulous experience living in the UK. And people asked me, they said, if you could go back and live any one place, where would you go? I might move back to the UK. I really, really enjoyed living there. And the people and the culture and the history and everything. It was a very rich 3 years for us. I think both as a couple, as an employee of a multinational large oil company. Just the experience itself was just phenomenal. We moved back to the U.S., so actually moved back to Baton Rouge, and we lived there in the early 2000s and through mid 2000s, and we're in the Baton Rouge refinery. So actually during Katrina and Rita, So that was quite a unique experience for us, having lived through that and the devastation that was inflicted upon New Orleans with the flooding and everything. So it was really a sort of, you think back and there's sort of a period of time in your career where a lot of things happened, a lot of things came together. But for us, that was a pretty formative experience. But then we ended up in 2007, we got an opportunity. I really wanted to get back into technology development because I'd spent a number of years, started in technology development, went on to work in refining operations, but then had an opportunity to go work for UOP, Universal Oil Products, which was at that point a Honeywell company, to get back into process design, catalyst development work. And we moved up to Chicago, Illinois in 2007. Actually, both my husband and I got positions. We left Exxon Mobil on the same day and joined Honeywell on the same day. So yeah, I really, Honeywell, I got into, straight into hydrocracking, catalyst development, process design, and leading transformation of the technology as we were, trying to improve the reactor design and the catalyst performance and higher yields and all that. So yeah, I was really taken along as a hydroprocessing principal specialist, and was asked actually then to have my first opportunity to go into management of people, with I'd say the biggest team that I had at that point, the opportunity to lead. And I've actually largely been in management roles since that time, so since about 2008. So hard to believe. In 2003, I left Chicago and left Honeywell and joined Lubrizol. So now I'm working in additives for lubricants, and moved my family from Chicago, Illinois, out to Cleveland, Ohio. So here I am.
Right. Here you are. So you're in Cleveland right now. Yeah?
I am. Yes, I am.
And those won't see this, but behind you, is that a sunny day or a snowy day, or what is Cleveland?
It is sunny today, and I'm looking out the window over here to the left, and the ground is covered in snow. So we've had a couple different snowstorms that came in right around a few days after Thanksgiving, and then again last week there was some more snow that came through. So it's beautiful, sunny and snowy, but not actively.
Which is lovely.
Not actively snowing at the moment, but who knows? With the lake, you get lake effect, and you could get completely walloped with snow if you're not careful. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. Well, it sounds idyllic. It sounds idyllic, I have to say. I mean, I want to understand what. I mean, you mentioned lots of things there about catalysts and all the sort of amazing things you did from a technology perspective. There's a whole gap for me there. What got you to be a technical person? I mean, was it something from like day one you were curious? Was it, or was it something that grew and grew and grew? Or because you told me you wanted to get into energy almost off the bat, but what about the technical bit? Why not just go into the commercial bit to start with? Well, tell me about that.
Well, my first love is chemistry. So when I was a junior in high school, I took AP chemistry and just fell in love with the subject. And I had a teacher, her name is Jackie Sims, and she still lives in Jacksonville, Florida. She really influenced me for this learning and this love of chemistry. So much so that I took it upon myself to ask and say, hey, can I talk to some people that work in fields where chemistry is applied so that I can learn more about what this might look like as a career? And so she helped to connect me up. Actually, interestingly enough, where I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, paper and pulp industry was very, very big growing up. So we used to always, you could smell it in the air when you were driving around. And my dad used to say, yeah, that's the smell of money, which it was the processing of the pulp and making of the paper. Well, I met some people who were chemical engineers that worked in that space. So they kind of told me about and showed me the kind of work that they do. And I thought it was fascinating. And at the time, actually, I worked on a number of different independent study research projects. So I did essentially science projects. But I also went away to a program between my junior and senior year at the University of Florida that was a science for science students. And so I knew pretty early on that something in STEM was going to be what I would do as a career. And of course, I liked math. And I didn't really like math until I got to calculus. And I said, oh, this is the kind of math that I can really identify with. Most students would say, oh yeah, I got to calculus. And that was, the tough class. But to me, it just started to fit together. But yeah, I was pretty nerdy in high school, I will say. I was sort of an anomaly with my classmates. People could tell early on that I really had some type of an academic path ahead of me, or some type of pretty serious study that I wanted to get into. And so that's really, as I started to put all that together, how I ended up in chemical engineering, because I love the chemistry piece. But I wanted to do something that was scalable, something that was bigger, and really was fascinated with reactions and reactive chemistry. And so that's, in a way, how I ended up eventually, when I went to go work for Mobil first and then Exxon, getting into reactor design and heterogeneous catalysis. So I do not have a PhD, though. I just have a BS in chemical engineering. Some of my professors tried to convince me, hey, you should really stay on and get a PhD. And I decided I wanted to go out and work in the industry, get hands-on experience that way.
Proved to be a great choice, and we'll come on to that as we go forward, for sure. I mean, what I love about that story is the hero in the story, Jackie Sims, right? And yes. you still know of her. You still know where she is, and everybody needs that hero, right? To nudge you. So, did she give you not just the practical or the subject experience? And if it wasn't her, was there somebody else that gave you can achieve it kind of belief? Or was that inherent already within you? Because you were entering a field of work at the time that was less represented by female than it is now, I would imagine. So
yeah, very true.
I'm interested to understand, was it Jackie Sims that pushed you that way, or was there somebody else that gave you that art of really believing that anything was possible?
I was pretty motivated. I'm still pretty motivated. Generally speaking, when I set my mind to something, I figure out a way to do it. It may take a little while, but I'm pretty persistent. And I've always gravitated toward more challenging work, more challenging endeavors. And I've never been the kind of person that wanted to hit the easy button or take an easy way out. So I was pretty internally driven early on and didn't really need too much encouragement necessarily. Although I will say, absolutely, I received encouragement all across the board from my family, from friends, from teachers, from people within the industry. And at the time, I didn't really, maybe I was naive. It didn't really occur to me that I was picking an area to study that was less represented by women. It wasn't really something that I worried about too much. And even when I looked at universities, I realized at some point, I said, yeah, there's probably going to be fewer women that are in some of these fields, but I'm okay with that. And actually, part of a lot of what I've done over the years and have worked to help establish within companies is employee resource groups that help women to develop their careers and their interests, and was exposed to that pretty early on in Exxon, where we founded a women's interest group. And that was pretty active. And then actually over time, once I joined Honeywell, I actually helped to form that at Honeywell with a number of other women. They had some kind of attempts to do it over the years, but really sort of around the 2011 2012 timeframe was where that really started to take off at Honeywell. So I've always been very invested in helping all sorts of different people to become their best and to learn, but to give employees and people a safe place to grow and develop. It's not just the work that you do, but it's sort of the people that you're doing the work with, making sure you have a team that feels comfortable to be themselves and to speak up and participate and be involved and to take chances. I think that's all really important things for people to have in their career.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I mean, you're probably being that, well, not probably, you are being that sort of force for good for people looking in, right? And I think that's really important, that people that are listening to our conversation, know that there are not only there are potential and possibilities, but there are role models and support mechanisms to help them with their careers. But behind it, there also needs to be that personal drive and desire to make the most of any opportunity that's there as well, because you've got to walk through the doors that are open, right? No one's going to walk through it for you, I guess, right. To use a clumsy analogy.
Yeah, you have to be the one to take the chance, right? You have to be the one to go for it.
Yeah.
No one's going to do it for you.
I saw that on your LinkedIn profile, actually, Women's Interest Network, cited as something. So what does that, I mean, it's a way back potentially now, but what sort of tangible things would that have done for somebody or does for somebody?
I mean, I have had experiences with all sorts of different people, men and women, who have been involved in these networks. And it's about learning something maybe that you're not thinking about every day, but that you should be aware of. And I think for teams to be effective and diverse, people need to be in tune with how may someone else view this experience? How may somebody feel who looks and speaks differently? What is that like for those individuals? And so I think it goes both ways, both for an education of people maybe who are used to being around people very similar to themselves for quite a long time or shrunk their career. But then as, the diversity develops within companies, how to kind of help that come along and help that be really part of the culture of the company. And I will say, this industry looks different than it did when I joined it more than 30 years ago. And I love that it looks different. It feels different. You do see more diversity, absolutely. But I will say that, as you get into more senior leadership positions, you don't see as many women. And I think that we still have a lot of work to do to help with that. It all across the different levels across the organization. So I'm fortunate in that our CEO is also a female. So I have a very good role model to look up to as well. So, but we wish there were, maybe more of us, maybe more females in some of those senior leadership positions. So.
Ready to stop guessing how lubricant buyers truly decide? Well, come and see us, the Plan, Grow, Do team, at the 30th ICIS World Base Oils and Lubricant Conference in London on the 4th of February. Join our exclusive Buyer Revolution workshop or tune in to our one-off session on buyer behaviour alongside an event where you'll gain strategic clarity from over 70 experts and secure essential face-to-face time with the entire global market. Be in the room where strategy meets profitability. Search for World Base Oils and Lubricants now to secure your access.
I mean, I saw quite a dramatic change during my, 2 and a bit decades at Shell International. I saw from the beginning towards the end something very different towards the end. I saw very, very deliberate, but deserving. I mean, don't get me wrong, very deliberate, but the right things happening to represent the world in a much more sort of fair and right way. But I have to echo your comments. At the pinnacle, the most senior positions, I think some of that still was territory to conquer. But I think with the quality of the people that were coming through, I don't think it will be long. And as a father of 3 20-year-olds that I am, they have to be seeing this pathway. They have to see it, and people like yourself help them see it. And the network groups that you talk about and your role modeling is absolutely essential. So thank you for doing what you do there, because I'm certain it helps many see what they can achieve.
Yeah,
so brilliant
I hope so.
for that. I believe it does. I can now name senior female leaders in organizations where before I couldn't. And I think that starts to become very significant. So the chief technologist in Shell is female.
I know her. Yes.
Yeah.
Quite a few of my interfaces at Shell are all female. So, and I love that.
Yeah. And that's special. That's special, right? That's special. So that's brilliant. Let's think about where we are now. We've trod this journey so far. We've had you come through a very clear career. You were always going to be in energy. It started when Jackie Sims taught you all about chemistry, the periodic table, and then we had a maths lesson thrown on top of that. And all of a sudden, my goodness, I'm going to be an engineer. And therefore I all of a sudden got my MBA in engineering. Did you say mechanical?
No, chemical.
Engineering?
Chemical
engineering, chemical engineering. And now we're moving our way, and we're doing all these fancy things with fancy words that I think are very, very worthy, but have absolutely no idea what they are. But now, Pete, you're being recognized, I guess, and people are saying, can you lead a team? Could you do what you did, but could you lead others to help them do that too? So you're deeply technical, you're deeply an expert, and you're being recognized. What was that feeling when somebody said, it's time to lead a team? How did that feel?
Well, it was a bit intimidating, but I thought, well, I can try it. And, worst case, I decide to go back to inventing new, process designs or innovative catalysts or self-fighting catalysts or whatever. So I thought, okay, let's give it a try. I around that time, I had just become a parent and was in the midst of, raising a small boy and working dual career with my husband. And so I thought, all right, well, this is going to be a bit of a sacrifice to take a managerial role. But I thought it was worth at least giving it a go. And I will say, like, my first few supervisory roles were, I don't think I was very good. Up this, like, I got myself in some hot water sometimes because I would say something and I didn't appreciate how that would land or how that would sit with individuals and people. So I had to learn self-awareness pretty quickly, where I'm like, okay, I can't just sometimes state what's really obvious and factual. That's not going to work when you're trying to relate to people and you're trying to motivate or coach people. So I did a lot of work, did a lot of leadership training, which was great. So formal training, that was all done through Honeywell by and large. But I had started doing that at Exxon, at ExxonMobil, before I had really launched sort of my first major supervisory role. But in addition to actually supervising a pretty large team in the R&D group, I was in charge of a pretty good chunk of the R&D budget for the organization. So, you're stepping up at accountability from business impact, a company impact perspective, and you're managing, at that point, I think 15 to 20 people were in my team. And so you're spending more of your time actually helping your team be effective, equipping and enabling that team. And so you always, I think every minute you've got a choice to make to say, is this something that I should do myself, or should I delegate this and give someone an opportunity to learn and grow and do something new? So I go back to that quite a lot, even today, where when I'm given a task, I look at it and say, is this something that I should do myself? If so, why? Or is this something that if I turned it over to someone else to go work on, what opportunity does it present for that? What experience does it unlock for that? And so I am very much about giving that work away, being there to help, review it, talk about it, answer questions. But I spend a lot more of my time as like a facilitator. I don't play the instruments, but I help it all come together so that it all makes sense and that the performance is good. The experience is good. But, I'm very happy for other people to step up and have an opportunity as well.
But that was probably quite a journey to get to that point, right? Because I remember when I first started leading people, that go on, off you go. I'm going to watch you. I know it's going to make you grow. I know it took me quite a few years before I sort of liberated them, because I can imagine your colleague at ICIS last week, when you let them get on and do that presentation. I can imagine you wouldn't have done that some years back. So it is a journey, isn't it, about learning what matters, when it matters, how to put safety nets around people.
Yes.
How to sort of create the environment for them to succeed. So that's a mind shift change. Are there sort of moments where you remember that happening, or was it more just evolution?
To some extent, evolution, but I would say that I remember people doing the same with me, and where I had opportunities to take new roles or different roles. And maybe I wasn't the first person that came to mind always, but at some point I kind of came to be this reliable person, someone who was courageous to try something new. And over time showed people who took those chances on me that I was able to either turn a business around or help enable a team to solve a hard problem. And I think I've approached my career with sort of this sense of like fearlessness, that I'm willing to try anything once, sometimes twice. But it doesn't, the thing with that is that it doesn't always work out. I have made choices that didn't work out, where it didn't end well, where it didn't go the way that I wanted it to. But I learned a lot. And I came out the other side of those experiences, a different person for sure, but somebody who could relate to others to say, look, I understand you may be afraid to try something new because it's scary, because there's that fear of failure always in the back of our minds. But I try to help people think about, and I do this with myself too, like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Right? Like, what does that look like? And am I okay with that state? If that's the worst thing that happened, am I okay with that? And usually I'm like, that could be pretty rough, but what's the likelihood that sort of thing's going to happen? Anyway, and I will say though, if you connect well with people and develop relationships, no matter where you are, even if sometimes decisions don't go your way or things don't quite pan out, if people know that you have good intentions and that you are being honest, that they'll support you. And they'll come back to you and they'll say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, maybe something that we decided to try to do didn't actually manifest in the way that we wanted it to happen. Because we do work in a space, right, where markets change, economics change, geopolitical things change. I think it's much, much harder today to do business than it was even 20, 30 years ago when I started in this industry. I feel like go through these periods where there's not a lot of change. There's some change, but it's kind of like a ratable change, or it's kind of predictable change. I think in the last 10 years, kind of ever since, around COVID time, we've entered this space of just this rapid acceleration of information, access to information, things shifting so quickly from a geopolitical perspective, from an employment perspective, you're just seeing like these things kind of speed up, and it could be anxiety inducing, right? For many, many people. But I kind of like it until like a roller coaster ride. And some people really hate roller coaster rides. I will tell you, there's some that I will refuse to get on. I've done them once and that's enough. But what I do like roller coasters, and what I found is like the experience of riding a roller coaster. That's kind of what life is like these days. And you could either be tense and be rigid and get on that roller coaster and like fight the forces, but you're going to have a much more enjoyable time if you kind of relax in the seat, look around and say, oh, this is, a beautiful view, and enjoy the ride, because it goes by really fast. And you may think like, oh gosh, how am I going to get through this? But a lot of those, experiences, if you relax and you kind of enjoy them, say, I'm going to get enjoyment out of this, even though it's scary.
Yeah.
You come out the other side like, oh my God, I did that. That was so exciting. Right.
And I think what you say there, people listening into this, I think can pick up some real mindset best practices, if that's such a statement. I don't know if it is, but there are some things there that are really important. But there's that one thing about leading now must be more challenging than leading when I was at my most senior in an organization.
I would agree.
Because I remember the biggest change was probably the internet, right? It was massive. We stopped using telephones and we started sending emails, whatever. Yeah. But now the rapidness of change and technology and innovation, it must make the job of leadership so much more complex, because you can't possibly have all the answers, because people are asking more questions now than they ever asked before. So those people like yourself in leadership positions, my expectation looking in is you're more facilitating. You use the word orchestrating, because you can't possibly have all the answers. You just might have more experiences, might be better resourced, might be better networked, but you can't possibly have all the answers.
Oh, no.
I don't know. Just my view.
No, because of just the proliferation of information that's out there. So when you think about people today, if they're going into careers where they want to become subject matter experts, it isn't so much about knowing lots and lots and lots of things. I think it's more about understanding where to go to find information, who to go talk to, how to go put that book of research together, because, you can speed up the collection and the sorting of information now with all the tools, analytics, artificial intelligence that are out there. But what doesn't change is teaching people how to think critically. And so those skills are still very, very useful, whether you're a technologist, a specialist, or whether you're in managerial leadership positions. It's to think about here's the information that's been presented to me. How do I make a call on this? How do I make the right decision? And how do I go about socializing my ideas? How do I go about kind of pressure testing that? I think that there's a lot more afforded to us as managers and leaders to be able to do that. Whereas maybe in the past, the thought was, well, the leader's got all the information and they're just going to process it and make a call, right? I don't think you can operate in that way anymore effectively. You have to take stock of it. You've got to listen to a number of different sources before you make a call on something. And if you're not doing that, you might miss something. And so I do think it's important. I know that a lot of people feel a lot of pressure to like, well, I should do something quickly. If I don't take an action, then I'm going to get left behind, or I'm going to have, it's kind of this like fear of missing out. But sometimes waiting for it and actually kind of like taking a step back and taking that breath are important, because you can double check yourself and say, okay, what's the real thing I'm trying to do here? Am I losing focus on what the actual problem is I'm trying to address or solve? And what do I need to be doing fundamentally to get at the root of that? And if you react too quickly sometimes, or you kind of like, don't take the time to understand, you could really get it wrong. I think we think that like we associate speed with good, and speed isn't always the best thing.
That's a great insight. When I was sort of prepping for this conversation, I thought we would be talking about innovation around technology.
Yeah, we should do that too.
Well, but I think the innovation around leadership is really has been quite a fascinating moment that we've hovered on for a while there, because I think that sort of frame that you've just described, you've used things about, used the phrase critical thinking becoming more and more important. And as I start to think about people and teams of the next generation, or even the people you look for now, what are those things that you probably look for now that you didn't look for in the past, if that's such a way of framing the question? What are those things that you look in people that you're employing, or people that you're looking to attract to Lubrizol? What are you looking for now that you didn't look for maybe 10, 15 years ago?
I don't know. I feel like I've always looked for the same things.
Okay.
But I think I think that those skills are way more important now. But I think that, again, and I did a lot of work when I was at Honeywell UOP to do hiring and talent acquisition. And we were looking to hire engineers to go into our field service organization. And even though we're, a deep technology company, many innovations, many just very smart teams, very smart people, I always looked for people who were able to communicate and relate. And because I think being effective with customers and listening to customers and helping them solve problems is so important, even if you are deeply technical. I always looked for people that were relatable, that they could communicate well and could be in front of customers, even at a pretty early on in their career. And I will say, to this day, I still think that's a really important skill that people, even engineers or scientists, should have. I need to be able to translate complex concepts or theories into relatable things that are understood by a layperson. And I think that as scientists and as engineers, we have a duty to help relate complex information in a way that everybody can understand. And so I've always tried my best to do that myself, but I've also helped teams and individuals do that on the projects they're working on. But also because I think it helps when we listen to our customers explain the challenges and the issues they're having, to translate, do the reverse of it, to take that back in and internalize and say, this is what our customers said about this particular application or this particular product or problem they're having. How do we translate that into the technology and the innovation where we can change or tweak something and actually have it solve a problem for the customer. Because when you do that, that's the linkage between the value in the market, the problem you're looking to solve, or the opportunity you're looking to unlock. And so I do think that, again, technology companies, a lot of times are kind of like, well, we came up with this new idea and we think it's going to be fantastic. And you look at it and you go, yeah, but then how are you going to maintain the sensor on that piece of equipment? How are you going to train someone to use this? And is it going to be robust? Is it going to work? What is a failure mode that you can think about so that they don't have it and it works for like a day or a week and then it doesn't work all of a sudden? And then what are they going to do? So, thinking about all those different design aspects, I really enjoy being involved in translating back and forth between customer needs and product innovations and technology.
And that's really, really interesting. I was having a conversation actually this morning. We were with a client this morning, and they were observing in their area almost the community becoming anti-tech. So what do I mean by that? It's so easy now just to type your question into one of the AI bots, right? And get an answer and not fully understand the answer. So this is connecting back to your making something understood. It kind of emphasizes the point that the human interaction and explanation is being heightened in its importance with the emergence of robots. Because if we truly don't understand the input that the robot's giving us, are we going to accept that as the answer? Or are we going to really try to understand it? Therefore, through innovation, through technology, through all of this development, it isn't just about developing, it's about telling the story and explaining, right? So, I don't know whether this is a well-constructed question or not, but do you kind of see a world where we sort of rebel against the robots and we champion the people again? And because you're describing to me, that's an attribute you look for, right?
Well, I do think that the up and coming generation has quite a bit of anxiety around automation, AI, software, these types of things, because as humans, we want to be relevant and we want to be connected to communities and we want to be appreciated and respected, have really, long-standing relationships. And I think that this generation is facing sort of a bit of a crisis around, where do I fit into this whole construct? And if I'm replaceable with a software program or AI, what value do I have, right? Where do I fit? And so I do think that there's going to be sort of maybe the pendulum swinging back a little bit to the other end, which is emphasizing more around real things, tangible things, more focus on people. Because there's this sort of fear that if we're going to lose ourselves, we're going to be lost in the matrix. That's, again, and there's a lot of, I love sci-fi, by the way. I absolutely love sci-fi because I think there's a lot of relatable elements in science fiction around how do people fit in to technology? What are the implications for us? And can you apply technology for good? I know there's a lot of sci-fi out there about how it backfires and how it goes haywire, which I also find fascinating because I think from an engineering perspective, right, that it's good to think those things through. Like, how could this go wrong? But yeah, I think at the end of it, right, we have to make sure we don't forget the humanity, the human part of all this is that we wouldn't have all of this that we have today without the people, the inventors, the creators, the innovators, the pioneers. We wouldn't have any of it.
Yeah, we wouldn't. And I love the way this conversation has taken us to the core, really. It's about how you started this conversation. It's about storytelling, which is ultimately about the people element in any business, any leadership message, any success. It's about the people. And I want to come back just before we close out and ask you what might be one of those magic moments of learning that you would share with somebody that they could take forward, to a quote that I think is attributed to you. And I like it very much. And if it's not yours, grab it, by the way. Creativity and innovation give us hope for the future. And I very much like the direction of that, because it underlies for me the need to continue to innovate, the need to continue to be creative, but actually to own the future. And what I've heard through our storytelling today is you've owned this. From Jackie Sims to now leading people that you are fortunate enough to lead as senior within Lubrizol. And I think if we're keeping people at the core of this with creativity and innovation, I think we're in incredibly good hands. So, I'm really grateful for you sharing with Beyond the Blend audience many, many great stories and learnings. But if there was one thing I was to say, if you was to give a piece of advice to somebody 25 years back, what might that be? What might that be?
So would this be advice that I would give to my 25-year-old self, or advice that I would give to? I think it's really to be open to new experiences and to not be afraid to try new things, and to listen to yourself and not be dissuaded by what other people think or what you think is the expected thing to do, and that you need to be true to yourself. And that goes both ways. I think when something's working, great, you got to ask yourself, why is this going well? And if it's not going well, you kind of have to take a step back and say, why is this not going well? And usually the answer is, it's you. I always feel like I'm the problem. It's usually you. So, own that, figure that out. Talk to people. Don't be afraid to ask for people to be completely honest about what they think of how you've done something. Because I think the more that you can be open to that and accept feedback and be self-aware, you're going to come away as a, much more, trustworthy person, but also somebody who people feel like they can share information and share feedback with you, because you're willing to accept it. You're willing to own it and do better with it. But I think also surrounding yourself with people who will challenge you as well and will hold you accountable, and be okay if you get called out on something. You're like, oh yeah, that's okay.
Love it.
It's okay to have that, right? Because you're a real person. And so
I love it. I think there is so much in there, and people listening would have taken so much from this conversation. It's been a real pleasure to have met you, not the person I bumped into coming down the elevator, but the person that, has sat back and had a chat. Somebody that, in fact, I'm now waiting until you're on the stage cracking jokes in some Chicago.
Will you come do Second City with me, Steve? If I do Second City, will you come do that with me?
I'll be there. There's one of those promises made live on air. But it's been a pleasure, Brenna. If people wanted to find out more about Lubrizol, follow your journey, where's the best place to send them so they could find that information?
Well, for sure, you can take a look at our website, but you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Brenna, thanks ever so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll speak again soon.
Thank you, Steve. Bye.
The world's leading lubricants-focused trade event comes to the Middle East this January. Lubricant Expo Middle East will take place from the 20th to 22nd of January at Festival Arena, Dubai Festival City in the UAE. With over 120 exhibitors covering the entire lubricant value chain and 1,500 visitors, including industry leaders, OEMs and end users. It's an unmissable opportunity to meet and do business in this exciting region. Register now to attend for free. Head to lubricantexpo.com/me for more information.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Blend. Be sure to follow us to catch next and future episodes as we continue to explore the people within the lubricant market.